It's 12:30 at night. Everyone's supposed to be asleep, but guess what I'm doing? I'm making a video. I'm also cleaning my toilet because it needed cleaning. Sad but true. My apartment's in dire need of a scrub. You know, when you live by yourself, you tend to let a few things go, and we won't discuss the pile of dishes in my sink or the really nasty state of my bathtub or the giant pile of laundry that's piling up in my bedroom, or the fact that I ignored all that today to look at YouTube videos of very pointless stuff. All I'm saying is that I am still in the I don't have to write 25-page papers on Karl Marx or liberation theology. I'm still in the me, I'm free kind of mode. So not having adult responsibilities is really nice, except when your bathroom's kind of gross. So right now I'm waiting on the cleaning solution to work in my toilet so I can scrub it. And I thought, well, what the hey, I'll just make a video for my mom, and why not? In today's video, I was sort of batting around what I wanted to do with the video, and for nothing else other than what am I going to talk about? And yesterday, my mom and I got to chatting, and we've been talking back and forth. Texting each other. She'll text me every few days with the latest update on her health, and then she'll ask me what I'm up to. And yesterday we were talking, and she asked, "Well, what are you up to?" And I'm doing some filing in the office. Oh, and yeah, and I'm listening to some music. She's like, "Are you listening to that Hamilton again?" No, I'm listening to that in my car. In the office, I'm listening to something very different. Thank you very much. True, mostly because I like singing along with Hamilton, and I work at a Christian university, and I don't think that they would appreciate some of the brilliantly rhyming couplets in there. So, yeah. So we got to chatting about just music in general, and I was teasing her about, I need to send you the soundtrack of Hamilton so you could start listening to it. My mom is an amazing woman and always has been and has always loved music. She was a music major in college. She inspired me to be a music major in college. Neither one of us finished. But that doesn't mean that we didn't love music. And music was a big part of our household when I was younger. And so when I was teasing her about, yeah, okay, Mom, so I'll send you the soundtrack and maybe you can just sit there and just jam out to the hip hop. What would my 17-year-old brother say to that? Mom sitting there like, grew into a hot 16, and she's like, I think it'd be awesome, but I don't think your younger brother would appreciate it as much. He's not that into music. And I'm going, whoa. Wait, hold up. He's 17 years old. That's what 17-year-olds do. You find some esoteric bit of music that you're like really into, and you dork out on it. I did that at 17. I mean, I spent pretty much my entire senior year hiding from my family upstairs in my bedroom with my little single cassette player radio set up, making mixtapes from off the radio, and pretending like I was going to be like the next hip hop princess. That was what I did when I was 17. And she's like, no, he's not into music. I'm like, are you sure we're genetically related? I'm not positive he's my brother. He could be a pod person. Yeah, I just don't understand how that happens. How can you be my brother and be not into music? I don't know about this. So, which led my mom to reminisce fondly about me at 17 when she's like, yes, I remember you at 17, you wanted to be a music producer, move to California, and become the next Whitney Houston. True facts. I'm like, yeah, I got the California part down. I did move to California. That was about it. I still want to be Whitney Houston. rest in peace. My heart's still not recovered from that loss. Whitney Houston or Ella Fitzgerald. I'll take either one. Music was a huge part of just my teenage life. I think in part just because music was a huge part of just my family's life. I lived in a family of musicians. I don't think they realized they were a family of musicians until, a little bit later. But, both my parents were singers. My mom on that side of the family, the Norrises in particular, my mother's father's family, were huge into country and bluegrass. That was their entire jam. She told me stories of her dad when he was little, getting out all the pots and pans in the kitchen and playing them like drums, and driving his parents crazy. He and his brothers used to have a band. I'm assuming back in the 40s, 50s era, that they would do their little jamming thing, which I think is really ridiculously cute. And apparently that entire side of the family was very musical. And even members of the other side of the family were musical. So my mom came from a really big musical background. She sang, she played piano, she did percussion. She loved it. And she went off to college to study music. She was really talented. Her sisters all had piano, played instruments. My cousins all did it. Several of my cousins are singers or members of a band or both, so that entire side of the family is very musical. My dad's side was also, to an extent, my grandmother, my mom, couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. I distinctly remember sitting beside her in church going, Mom, why don't you sing pretty like all the other people do? I was at least honest. She laughed at me, but I was honest. Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but her mother was a very gifted musician, and my dad inherited a very lovely voice, and so between my dad and my mom, I had singers for parents, and then I came along, and so did all my siblings. It wasn't just me, unfortunately. They didn't get the hint. They didn't stop at me. They should have, because hello, perfection. But no, they have my brothers and sister, all of whom, to an extent, can sing, which I think is amazing. All of whom, to an extent, have studied music or played an instrument. And I think my brother Tommy's the only exception. But music was just sort of the background of our family life. I mean, I distinctly remember growing up, my father, he loved to sing, just randomly. He would wander through that. He'd wake up in the morning singing. Do you know how annoying that is? As you can guess from the timestamp on this video, I'm a night owl. My dad wasn't. Dad was a morning person. He liked to wake up. And when he woke up, he liked to sing. If you want to see a homicidal, crazed redhead, sing to her at 8 a.m. in the morning when she's trying to sleep and hasn't had coffee yet. Dad, I think, was the only morning person in the family, but he sang everywhere. He loved to sing. He would sing in the shower. He would sing in the office. He would sing in the kitchen. He would sing whatever, and he'd make up his own songs all the time. One of the favorite little animated movies of growing up was The Hobbit. My dad was a huge Tolkien fan, and he made up his own words to the Bilbo, the Nine Fingers, and the Ring of Doom song. I didn't know those words for 20 years. I didn't know the actual words to that song for 20 years. The Davy Crockett song. Oh my God, Davy Crockett song. My dad grew up in the 50s, and of course he loved Disney's Davy Crockett. And if you grew up, you knew that song. Born on a Mountaintop in Tennessee. killed him a bar when he was only 3. My dad loved that song, and he would sing it, but he changed the words up all the time. Until I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't know that there really wasn't a mountain in East LA. But according to my father, Davy Crockett was born on a mountaintop in East LA. I don't know why, but he thought that was funny. So, and before any of you bring up Mount Washington and make me want to punch you, no, Mount Washington is not a mountain. It's a very large hill. I've been on it. So Dad was always singing and making up silly words. He was kind of a goofball that way. My mom was the often the church pianist and the choir leader. My father was a minister, so she often served as the music leader and worship leader in our church. And she played the piano and she could sing, and they both worked really hard to try and teach me music. Sometimes with success, a lot of times without it. I didn't have a lot of patience or concentration on music when I was younger, but it was sort of just the tapestry of my life growing up was just having music all around. And it was all sorts of music. My father was the one who taught me to love Beethoven. And you cannot argue with me. Beethoven is the greatest composer who ever lived. Don't get me into this Mozart business. It was Beethoven. Because, hello, Mozart wrote all pretty and cutesy and jokesy and crap. Beethoven was balls to the wall, enlightenment. Let me show you some heroic, crescendos and decrescendos and dynamics and romance. And by the way, I'm deaf. I mean, Beethoven was amazing. And my dad taught me to love Beethoven. Both my parents had a penchant for old movies, for the classic black and white films. And so I learned to like jazz that way. I learned to like big band that way. The classic American songbook, that I learned that all from old movies. And the good old hymns. Hymns are so underappreciated nowadays. I mean, in churches nowadays, it's all about the praise songs, the Hillsong, and whatever snappy and sounds like it came off the radio. But there's something about the old classic hymns that I grew up with in those good old-fashioned Southern Baptist churches in the 80s. The old rugged cross and Victory in Jesus and Amazing Grace. How could you go wrong with Amazing Grace? Of course, it took a long time for my sister to realize Amazing Grace wasn't about her. Her name is Grace. This was the background of my childhood. And then, of course, I got to be older, and I grew up in the 80s and the 90s listening to pop music. So, when I was a kid, Michael Jackson. Oh my gosh, Michael Jackson. I feel sad for kids growing up now. They're not going to know who Michael Jackson was. I mean, I seriously still remember where I was at when I heard he died. I was buying contact lens fluid in the Target pharmacy, but that was where I was when I heard he died. Michael Jackson and the 90s with the rise of R&B and hip hop, at least how I remember them, and alternative music, grunge. I was a big fan of the grunge. Give me a little Nirvana. Yeah, I was a big fan of Nirvana. Green Day. I loved Green Day. But I think the biggest single influence on me as a teenager, honestly, was Whitney Houston. Not even lying. Not even. I was just finding my voice as a young woman with a musical talent. And there was Whitney Houston, and I still distinctly remember when I fell in love with her. Because I'd heard some of her music before, but I fell in love with her at Super Bowl 25 when she did the national anthem. I remember who was playing in that Super Bowl. It was the Giants and the Bills. That was a good game. I watched the whole stinking thing. um, I remember I begged my dad to watch that game because I was also at that time just figuring out what football was. And football is pretty much what I spend every free minute watching in the fall. Um, I fell in love with football at the same time I fell in love with Whitney Houston, let's put it that way. And I begged my dad, Dad, let me watch the football game. I want to watch the football game. He's like, okay. And we saw Whitney Houston performing. I remember I looked at my dad, and my dad looked at me. I'm like, Daddy, I want to sing like that. And he's like, and my dad even was like, wow. Dad loved Whitney Houston. He loved Whitney Houston. And when she died, she died not long before he died. And when she died, he was just heartbroken. He was like, I can't, that woman, that girl had so much talent. How could she be dead? And I'm like, I know. Yeah, I remember looking at him that day in January of 1991 and going, Daddy, I want to sing like that. And I tried. Oh Lord, I tried. I wanted to be Whitney Houston, and I even sang "I Will Always Love You" for a talent show in 1993. Hopefully, the tape of that has been burned. Hopefully, it does not exist anymore, because I don't think I want that to surface anytime soon. Um, but yeah, I that was my ideal. I wanted to sound like her. And I remember lamenting that my voice just wasn't right. Like I didn't have that kind of voice. Um, it took me a long time to realize my voice was just fine. The voice I sang with was just a-okay. But I wanted to be Whitney. I think I wanted to be Mariah a little bit too, early Mariah, before that train went off the tracks. I wanted to be early Mariah. But I fell in love with R&B really hard, and total 90s pop R&B too. Was, all about Color Me Bad, and what was the one, All for whatever they were. They did the John Michael Montgomery cover. Oh, I loved all of them, and I was just like, I just so wanted to be like that, And of course, my favorite band. My favorite R&B band, I should say, because I loved a lot of rock bands too, but I was big into Nirvana and Green Day, but my favorite R&B band was Boyz II Men. Yeah, a little bit of Boyz II Men, a little bit of Motown Philly. Yeah, totally was into them. When Motown Philly hit, I was in 8th grade. I was like, oh my gosh, this blew my mind. Up until that point, I think I was in love with New Kids on the Block. True facts. I was in love with New Kids on the Block. What 12-year-old girl wasn't in love with New Kids on the Block? And I was convinced I was going to be Joey McIntyre's wife. Yeah. That didn't happen either. I didn't become Whitney, and I didn't marry Joey McIntyre. Pfft, what was this all for? Yeah, I was just coming off of the New Kids on the Block obsession, and then here comes this band, Boyz II Men, and I was like, this is new. This is different. I don't think it was new or different. It was just new and different to me, and I fell in love with Motown Philly. I love that song. I'd be up in my little bedroom, which looks pretty much like my apartment does now. It needed to be shoveled out with a steam shovel, and I would clean out a space, and I would just play that song over and over again, and I'd make up my own little dance routines to it. It was so bad. At least I got exercise. And I love that entire album, that whole first album of theirs. And I wore the tape out. And I wore it out. I actually had to buy a CD version of it because I busted the tape. I bought a CD version of it when I went away to college because I loved that CD so much. 5 and 6 years later, I was still listening to that CD. So I loved that album. And so when they came out with their second album, oh boy, I saved up all my pennies. I went straight to Walmart, because remember, small town, Walmart was the place. Went straight to Walmart. I bought that CD, and I listened to it as often as I could. I mean, I still remember probably my junior year. I think it came out my junior year, and being in the car waiting on my brother to get out of basketball practice or something. And my dad went inside to go watch him do his basketball practice. I was like, bunk that. I'm not watching him do basketball practice. I'm going to sit here in the car. And I had this album on. And I'm sitting in the car singing along to it, you know. Dad finally comes out to the car, and here I am crooning, I'll make love to you. And he's like, what? What are you listening to? I'm like, it's Boyz II Men, Dad. I don't want you listening to a band that's promising that they're going to make love to you. I'm like, Dad, it's just a song. What kind of music do you listen to? Oh, Dad, you just don't understand. This is Boyz II Men. It was years later. Actually, it was 2 years ago. I went and finally saw them in concert. They were at the LA County Fairgrounds, and I took a friend of mine from church who also grew up loving this music. And, you know, that song came on, I thought of Dad. I'm like, Dad would be horrified right now, because I'm sitting up there, this 37-year-old woman, singing that song as loud as I can, and I do have video of it. I have video of them singing it and me singing in the background. Just for you, Dad. So, yeah. That was the music of my youth. There was such good times. And I think for me, looking back on it now, those are happy memories. You know, sitting up in my room, listening to that music, kind of figuring out who I am and who I wanted to be, you know. And admittedly, I wanted to be a superstar like Whitney Houston, which, you know, didn't happen. But I think that was a very formative time for me. And figuring out just who Jennifer is. And, you know, things changed. I graduated high school. I went off to college. I discovered the Beatles. You wonder, why didn't I discover the Beatles earlier? You also have to understand my father had a hatred of the Beatles that I still to this day don't understand. But that just was not a part of my growing up. And when I discovered the Beatles, it was all downhill from there. I'm like, I became a humongous Beatles fan, still am, and I fell in love with jazz. I discovered Ella Fitzgerald, who became my new Whitney. I wanted to be Ella Fitzgerald, and I think one of the big things that I discovered when I graduated high school was Rent. Rent was it was huge. It was like a bombshell in the lives of anybody who's ever grown up with musical theater like I did. Because that was a musical about us. I mean, it was our music, and it was about the things that concerned us. It wasn't about love and romance, though love and romance are in it, but it was about, you know, people living and dying in America where there's drugs and AIDS and you know, what it meant to be living on the artistic fringe. It was La Boheme reimagined, and I didn't know you could reimagine La Boheme, because at the time I was straight up in a vocal performance major, and, you know, La Boheme was sort of like, you don't touch opera, and there was flipping Rent doing that very thing, and I was like, whoa, I didn't know musical theater could do this crap. Holy effing cow! So Rent was huge. Rent was a huge thing, and there was all these different things that just kind of came to, you know, affect me and define my music, and it's been kind of a fun experience, this whole falling in love with something new like Hamilton, because I feel like it just adds the layers of things that I keep finding and ways I keep redefining myself and who I am through music, because music was always the medium I used to find out who I am, and I guess in a way it makes me sad when my mom says oh, your little brother, he's not that into music. Every kid's different. His art lies somewhere else. He's actually a very gifted artist. He and our brother Jay are both, the two of them are very, very talented artists. I couldn't draw a stick figure straight if my life depended on it. So he's got his skill set. He loves video games. Loves video games. I like my video games. If you can't really see in these videos, but my apartment's decorated in Assassin's Creed. Because hello, I like stabbing things with hidden knives in historical eras. It's so amazing. But he's more of a video games aficionado than I am. And that's great. That's how he's going to figure out and define himself. Mine was music. And I know that someday he's going to do great things. Hopefully. If my mother doesn't kill him first. Right now, there's days I wonder. And, as for me, music, I didn't become a Whitney Houston. I went off to college. I did major in music. I didn't finish that degree. I ended up changing my degree to something else I was equally good at, and something else that was equally definitive for me, and that was history. I'm amazing at history. I'm almost I don't know, I would say I'm almost more amazing at history than I am at music. But that's not to say I left the music behind. I still sing. I sing in choirs. I sing in my church choir. I sing in another choir when I get time. With a PhD, it's a little crazy. I love singing in the car. Currently, I am. I'm learning how to rap along with Hamilton because I'm not good at it. I'm not. But it's just fun to sing along with. I haven't left my music behind. And it's still that thing that helps me escape, that motivates me, that I love. Often when I'm writing papers, I have on like cool, smooth jazz. Or, ironically, I like to listen to classical music a lot when I'm writing because it's just soothing. It helps me stay focused. And not opera. Can't do opera. Opera is too distracting because I'm a vocalist. So I'm wanting to sing along. But if it's straight up just symphonic orchestra, usually it helps keep me focused on what I'm doing. It just plays such a huge factor in my life. So yeah, I've not left it behind, and I never became Whitney Houston. In the end, I think I didn't want to be. Whitney was a beautiful, bright, shining star, and she passed far too young. And I realized quite early that what it takes to get to that level was probably a lot more work than I was ever going to be able to give to it. And I found something else that I could focus my energies on and be amazing at. But it's still there, and I still sing along. And, one day, when I get brave, maybe I'll crank out, the Bodyguard soundtrack. I think I still have the CD in the closet somewhere. And put that in my car. Go driving down the 210 freeway singing I Will Always Love You at the top of my lungs. And it'll be amazing because it will take me back to being that goofy 17-year-old with big dreams and big hopes who wanted to move to California. And I did. I moved to California. And I became a very different person, but a pretty awesome one. So anyway, I need to go finish cleaning my bathroom now so I can go to bed. But it's been kind of fun reminiscing on music and the role it's played in my life. And, hopefully Mom and I will chat and I'll think up of another brilliant idea to discuss here in a little bit. So have a good night.